What we've got here is a Esprit stove. It was $12.99 at the time. I got this a few years ago. We've got some of the fuel for it left, but we also have tea candles. I'm going to heat up a MRE entree. This is RS spaghetti with meat and sauce. So this isn't the vegetarian one. This actually has meat in it. And of course, tea candles are made to keep things warm. It's about 54 out today here in Maine in December. You can believe that. So we're going to put a few in here. We're going to light them up, and we're going to see what it does. So you'd have to be absolutely bonkers to not have a lighter with you if you have anything for, you know, survival emergency stuff in the car or whatever. This should be one of your first things that you put in. Have matches, and then, yeah, you can do the ferro rod type thing, but if it's a real situation where it's really important that you get a fire going, if you're not playing bushcraft and you actually have something going on, you'll want to have a lighter where you can light things. So we're just going to take, I think, 4 of these tea candles. We're going to put them in our stove. And then we're just going to lay the retort pouch over it. We may wish we hadn't. Ah! My goodness. There we go. This doesn't work as well with arthritis. I can tell you that. Like striking it and holding it. Oh, wind. We get that one lit. Oh, we had one blow out. There's a bit of wind. Now, I was reading about windshields that you put around stoves. And people talking about how dangerous it is with a canister stove, a stove that actually has gas. If you put the stove on top, the screw on the top, have it at full bore, and put the thing around it, everything can get really hot. But as I showed in one of my videos, you don't want to run the thing at full bore. You end up using 30% more fuel, and everything just gets too hot. So you turn it down a little. And the guy who did this video did later use this heat shield and moved it out a way. When he had it really close, it actually melted a hole in the heat shield, which definitely tells you something's wrong. So this looks rather anemic. There we are. 3 little flames. I suppose you could put one in the middle if I was desperate. Not much heat. We could decide this isn't such a great idea. But there we go. We're just going to rest it on the top. I thought I would say something about communications. Again, with what would you have that you most never want to rely on as your first thing above every other thing if we're actually talking about an emergency? And that, of course, is communications, your cell phone. Now, it seems to me with a cell phone, you should have a charging cord that works with your car. I mean, this is no excuse for not having one. They're pretty cheap, and they work. And then the other thing is that there are a lot of batteries that you can get. This one is one of the hokey ones that have the solar cell in here. Sometimes I've got to run this completely dead and my phone dead and see how long this has to be in sunlight before I can make a call. Because this is woefully undersized for what we want to do with it. I don't know if you can see right there or not, but the green light when I've got it, it's actually taking in some electricity now. There's a little green LED that lights up, and the sky is bright enough so that it is taking in some electricity. But how much is the question, is the real question. I'm going to turn this and take a look at it. Ooh, I don't know if the retort pouches, I'm hoping, have metal in them still. Flexible cans, they usually call them. They have I watched this really interesting show about the guy had a displacement vacuum sealing chamber, which is different than a food sealer. And you can actually get these retort pouches, put food in them, seal them, and cook them properly. And but there's a lot to it. You have to be careful at every step, like a lot of things with food, right? But the sealing chamber gizmo was $350. So I don't know. That puts it a little out of my range for the number of times. I guess if you were doing, I don't know, a lot of camping, hiking, or whatever, or you had a little organization that was doing it, you could, do these things and whip up a bunch of them. But they have to have a certain amount in them for them to seal and cook effectively. And they're only come in certain different sizes and whatever. So there's a little more to it than it would seem on that side. But so there we go. We got the the charging cord for the phone, the battery pack, and we need to have a cord that interfaces the two. I don't know if they have any of these where you could do the contactless charging, where you just set it on it. That, I think, wastes a bit of energy, which you really don't notice or care about when you do it in the house or something like that. But I think when you're operating from batteries, that would become apparent that you were doing that. So it would be better to have a cord. But so then you get your cell phone. But then, of course, so many places don't have cell service. We talked about the idea of having a radio. Of course, I believe a ham radio is best. But then you need to get a ham radio license. You buy a $20 book, study it for a month, take a test, get a technician class license, and then you can use this elaborate system of repeaters that have been set up. Now, they also have radios that, let me flip this again. I'm flipping this every once in a while. They also have other services that you don't need to have. You don't have to pass a test to be licensed on. And this is the MURS, the multi-use radio system, and GMRS. They're just like you pay $75, I think, for a 10-year license or something like that, and then you can use them. And there are repeaters with some of those. So it is not just a case of it's you talking to someone else that's near you. There are places where they have the repeater, so I could, just like the ham radio repeater here, I'm in Gorham, I can hit the one in Falmouth easily with this, and then that can go quite a ways. So I'm greatly extending the range of something like a handheld radio. This is the new Radtel that I've been playing with. I'm going to play a lot more before I do some videos with it, but the thing about this that's interesting is it does so many different bands. For the ham, it does 2 meter, 220, and 440. And 220 is a band that isn't that used that much, so it's kind of interesting to have that in and see how that compares with some other attributes and bands. But then we think one step up, really. And it used to be that these satellite communication things were really expensive. Or you bought this $140 thing that you could basically, you get in an emergency, you press a button, emergency rescue beacon, it sends out the signal, and someone comes and rescues you, right? Well, that might not be exactly what you want, because if you're not in a real emergency, or you've been stupid and gotten yourself in a real emergency, you may have to pay for all of the resources that were used to rescue you. And even if you weren't stupid, you might need to. But so now they have these satellite communication devices. You know, most people have seen the GPS Spot, which even Survivor Man had one of those way back then. Basically was, you know, this little thing, you press a button and it links to a satellite and, you know, it tells you someone you need to be rescued. Now, some of them go directly to emergency services, but then they have some other ones that don't. Or you can program in certain people, certain, in other words, I could set mine up for, let's say I pick 3 people. I could put these 3 people in the device. Now, they probably might have to have, for this to work, they might have to have an app installed or software on their computer to be able to, you know, communicate back and forth, because they are not using the satellite. They're being conducted through the regular, you know, say cellular or internet system that we have. But you could, if you were to say, let's just say, oh, gee, you know, I didn't bring enough food. Could you have, you know, I'm going to be at, you know, the head of Canyon D at, you know, 8 o'clock to, you know, Wednesday morning. Could you, you know, could you get me some more supplies? You know, that's a non-emergency thing, and hopefully the person on the other end, you know, you've arranged with, you know, whatever, and they would say, you got to be kidding, or, oh yeah, sure, I'll bring some up, whatever. But just the idea that you could do non-emergency communications, plus people can get into, some of them have, some use a cell phone and some don't. And to me, I'd want one that can operate somehow, even if it is only going to an emergency service, without the cell phone, because your cell phone can break or it can run out of charge. And if you've got this fancy device here that can talk to satellites, but it needs to have your phone to do it, that's, I don't think that's too brilliant an idea. And now we have, you know, eventually some of this is going to be incorporated in phones. And I think I read that, I don't know if it's the newest iPhone or the next one after this one, is going to have an emergency satellite capability. So in other words, you know, you're in a real disaster, you can boom, and it will go up to the satellite. And so the idea with a satellite generally is there are enough satellites so everywhere is covered. And that's almost true. From what I've read is with satellite phones anyway, that sometimes it's not that way. If you're in a really mountainous area, in other words, if you're, the satellite that you need to really hit is, let's just say 15 degrees above the horizon, and you get a mountain in between you so that, you know, you can't, it's got to be line of sight basically. So in really mountainous areas, you may have some problems. Or, you know, I assume too, in areas that are really, I don't know if you could take one to New York City and use it effectively with all the buildings and everything, whether that, you know, there is some sky, but that might obscure some satellites or whatever. It all depends on how sensitive the receiver is in these things, and transmitters. Got to have a transmitter strong enough to hit it again. But I know in the first days of GPS, if you walked into a house, the thing would stop. If you got under a tree with a lot of leaves, the GPS would stop working. It would say, oh, lost signal. And my goodness, if there was a lot of rain clouds, it isn't even raining, but they just come overhead, the GPS wouldn't work enough to actually pinpoint where you were. So GPS chips and everything have gotten much more sensitive, so that isn't as big a problem now. But I'm sure there's probably, you know, technology that will increase with these satellite devices. And yeah, I think eventually they will be, there are some, you know, handheld ham radios or multi-frequency radios that have some of those, the GPS and satellite functions built in. So I think that's just all, the technology tends to get cheaper as we're going along, or at least more available. You know, like these radios are really cheap. These, you know, and the Banggood, I think yeah, well, this is from Banggood, but the Bay of Fang, this one's the more famous one. This one's a newer one. But one of the reasons these are cheaper is not just that they have people that are paying nothing, you know, to do it. You know, they got to work, you know, 12 hours a day for 12 cents, if they're lucky. It's also that they're made cheaper. In other words, by made cheaper, I mean it doesn't have the same circuitry in it that a radio that you buy, let's say from Yaesu, that's made in Japan, and it costs the radio costs. Let's just make up the handheld radio costs $250, and this one costs, you know, $25. That other radio is going to be a lot better. It's going to sound better. You're going to sound better to other people. And having that intelligibility, that's a big deal with ham radios. In other words, if I had this one and it has double the power, say, of a more expensive radio, it could be that that more expensive radio actually can communicate better than the cheaper one that has higher wattage. So I'm just saying that to make people realize that kind of, and that it isn't just cheaper because they can make it cheaper. It's cheaper because it is cheaper. They're like, oh well, we don't need to put a speaker in that big. Well, what, this audio filter stuff? No, let's not worry so much if the transmission spills out where it isn't supposed to be, or there are harmonics somewhere. You know, let's just forget about that and put the radio together the way it is. So, you know, and some of these radios do violate, you know, there's some early ones, I think, that did violate the FCC conditions of using them, because they spilled over and the frequencies weren't that accurate and things like that. So it's just funny. But as getting back to communications, you know, as prices go down, my brother said he had one. I haven't looked at it yet. Frankly, I'm not in any really remote places. He goes to remote places, and one of my other brothers does too, and they both have two different, you know, satellite communication devices. And one of my brothers has one that's $200, and it allows a certain amount of, you know, texting back and forth. And I believe it does have an emergency button you can use if your phone is out of commission. But normally, I think you would work it with your phone, which is kind of a nice idea. You can chat back with people at home, or people could check and see how you're doing, or whatever, where you are. You know, the big deal, of course, with you can send your GPS position and someone can see it directly on a map, know where you are and everything. But coming down, some of them came down a lot, but they still had like really hefty subscription fees. But they've gotten out around that with some of them saying, well, you just subscribe for the months you want. And it's like, oh, you mean I can buy this thing, and instead of having to get a year's you know, service for, you know, I'll just make up $40 a month, I can only have it for the 3 months that I'll be using it? Oh yeah, you know, that sort of thing. I don't think they have any pay-per-use, although I think some of the early satellite phones were like that. In other words, every time you used it, the dollar, you know, like being in a taxi, it's going click, 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 and the charges are going up as you use it. So with cell phones, still, I think they work that way. But text is so much cheaper to work with. It takes up so much less space. And even that's something to remember. If you're in an emergency situation with your phone, and you can't get through with voice, you want to try to get through with texting, because sometimes texting will go through and a voice won't. And two, in an emergencies, if you had a lot of people trying to communicate at once, evidently, again, text is favored a little, so that your chances of going through a really busy cell tower are much better with text than they are with voice. So anyway, so this is puffed up a little, and it's gotten a little warm. Now, I brought a thermometer with me. I'm just in the front yard, but I just thought it'd be interesting. We're going to do some things about water pasteurization again with this type of setup, and see if we can get it up to a temperature where we can do that. So let's rip her open and put the old thermometer in and turn the old thermometer on. These were, I think I did a little review of these thermometers. I got well, this isn't it's only like, oh no, it's going up. These thermometers, they're cooking thermometers, right? They were only $5 a piece. I get 2 of them, and they're very slow. So in other words, normally you don't want slow thermometers because you're putting it in something, checking the temperature, then you're closing the oven door again. Well, with this one, I guess you have to take the food out, stick it in it, but we basically have a temperature of 96. So what has that been, over 10 minutes? So you can see that the tea lights are really struggling. And like I say, we're at 54 out here, so it's not even that cold. So let's try this out and see. There are sections of it that are hotter, of the bag. I'm just going to mix it up. And it's kind of like, sometimes, oh, we got steam. It's better not to look at it sometimes. That doesn't, somehow to me, that doesn't look very appetizing at all. It looks like, oh, the spaghetti's cut up. That's why. I was going to say, it looks like ant larvae or eggs. Hope it isn't. Although that would be nutritious too. And this tastes exactly like Chef Boyardee stuff, and I consider that horrible. But hey, if you're hungry, you'll eat it and you'll enjoy it. It's so funny. There was some of these shows they had, like, out of Venezuela, and then there was one where they were going through Alaska or something. And so it's this team of people, and they have to carry all this gear and stuff, and, you know, people could tap out and things, and so they're on this leg of the journey, and they haven't had anything decent to eat for a while, and they get a porcupine, and they're eating this porcupine. They're saying, oh my God, I've never tasted anything as good as this. This is better than the Kobe beef or whatever it is, the expensive beef that I had once. Because it's like, when your body is craving stuff, I mean, because it physically needs it, not just that it would be nice to eat, that porcupine tasted great. And I bet any of those people, after they got home, say 3 months or regular, and serve them porcupine, they'd probably be like, oh, what is this? But and two, the heat is going to make this taste better. So if I had gotten it higher up in the temperature range, it probably would have tasted better as well. But perfectly edible. I keep telling myself I'm not going to buy fast food anymore, but my last 3 encounters with fast food weren't very good. We're going through this one place, through the app, we get this, and my wife wanted a shake. We get there, well, our shake machine's down. Well, your app's supposed to know that. They're supposed to tell the app. So I say, well, just take it off the price. He said, well, we can't. You bought it through the app. And it's like, again, the app checks and sees if things are available. And so, anyway, we just got some other kind of drink or something instead of that we wanted. And then this was later at night at Burger King, and I had like a chicken thing, and the roll was stale. It wasn't good. And then we did something at Wendy's, and again it was like we got this, it was $10 for one meal. So why I'm bringing this up is that all of a sudden MRE is going to be cheaper to eat. when you're out and about than going to a fast food place. Especially if you're just eating the entrees, whatever. Because you figure, you've seen me with that smaller, reduced sodium MRE type thing. Those are $5. Well, that's way more food than you can get for $5 anywhere about now. But there we go. But I think it's neat how communications is improving so. And people often think of survival, we're going to go out in the woods and live. And really, what might be the thing that makes us most survivable in the future is us knowing our technology and how to do things with it and out around it. They're really hyping the artificial intelligence, right? Well, the things that are available to consumers are pretty lame right now. But it's not lame to some of the people that have the higher end of it, including the Israeli army. I couldn't find a lot of information, but they used artificial intelligence to help locate the tunnels. I thought that was pretty good, and I guess it really worked well. Now, we know Hamas uses people as human shields. They use hospitals, and so maybe it was based on what was where, how far things were from whatever, and whatever the design parameters of software was, that it would spit out and say, "Oh yeah, go to 12th Street 9 in this city, and you're going to find a door that goes crosses the border or something." But we used, I think I read that game theory was used, not really artificial intelligence, but kind of strategy to use that's different from just go find them and destroy them for submarines. But the idea of having some programmable way to tell you what another person's doing or another side is doing without you having to do all the legwork. In other words, obviously, if you check every place in the ocean, eventually you're going to find all the submarines if they haven't moved too much. But it's much quicker if something says, oh, these are the most probable places they're going to be. Now, human intuition a lot of times are going to tell you that, but something like this can look through a vast amount of data and make these assumptions based on more data than you usually can hold in your head at one time. One thing I don't like about the tea candles is they're liquid. So right now, even though I've blown it out, it's all liquid. And if we were in a place where you can see a little bit, we were in a place where this could jiggle and spill, all of a sudden you get hot wax that's flammable running out all over places. So that I don't like that idea at all. But that's why you normally are going to be using things like the fuel tabs here, or canister stoves, or a little stove that burns wood or whatever. But having some of these programs to do some of the things, eventually too, we're going to have counter-intelligence, artificial intelligence programs that tell us what someone else's artificial intelligence programs are telling them and how to go out around it, how to defeat it. So, I mean, that's got to be the thing that will be coming, because you just can't always be on the offensive. You have to be defensive too. So I think it's going to be important in the future as they go on with AA, that especially in military and governments and things, have programs that will say, well, you could attack here, but they're expecting you to. Why don't you go here first and do this? Do these 5 actions first, and they'll really get confused because they're thinking you're going over here. Who knows? But you know, the movie Operation Mincemeat and the older version of it, The Man Who Was Never There, true movie, mostly true. Some of the personality things they put in weren't true, but the idea was basically true, of a ruse that they did so that Hitler would believe that the Allied forces were going to attack through the island of Sicily rather than where they did, and this elaborate thing they set up, and how they were able to check to see that they did believe it, and how that was one of the perhaps single most important things that happened in World War II to bring it to a close earlier. Bye.